Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a terrible talk. You're going to spend each and every waking minute of this talk seething with anger, with misery and frustration. By the time I'm done, you'd be wondering why you came here at all in the first place. Now I see a lot of confused faces in the audience, so clearly I'm doing something wrong, right? Perhaps I should have started this talk with a positive thought, a joyful anecdote, or just something that put a smile on your face, right? How many of you agree with this? How many of you think that I should have done this? All right. To everyone that said yes, I ask you this. Why do you think that my talk would put a smile on your face and not a frown? Why do you think that my talk would be positive in the first place? Why is that? Before I answer that question, I want everyone to rivet their attention to the screen for the next few seconds. At this very instant, how many of you think that the ball is going to enter the net? All right. Again, by a show of hands, how many of you think that the ball is not going to enter the net? All right. Well, long story short, it did not. But there's something much more interesting at play here, and that is that there was a disparity in the answers. Some of you said yes, whereas some of you said no, even though I showed everyone the same clip and asked everyone the same question. Why does there exist that disparity? Well, there can be a multitude of reasons for this, right? It can be your own personal intuitions, it can be your feelings, past experiences. There are an infinite number of things that could have influenced your response. But what if I told you that there existed one singular element that was common in all of the things that I just listed right now? What if I told you that that one singular element is what is a driving force in our decision-making processes? Ladies and gentlemen, that element is called optimism bias. In uncertain circumstances, our minds are always attuned to be optimistic, to be hopeful, to look on the bright side, and eventually believe that things will eventually go our way, no matter how irrational it is. We tend to overestimate the possibility of success and underestimate the possibility of failure. Imagine this, to put this into perspective. Two people are locked in the same prison cell. One of them looks outside and sees the starry night sky and is truly in awe of nature's magnificence. Whereas the other, he looks outside and sees the bars of his cell and the mud that entraps him within. This is an active example of how a pessimist and an optimist can be locked in the exact same room, be in the exact same circumstance, and yet see things differently. So, ladies and gentlemen, the pessimistic optimist, what could this oxymoron of a title possibly imply? First, we must examine pessimism as an idea. Pessimism is a tendency to look at the worst aspect of things. As a pessimist, one believes that the absolute worst is going to happen in a situation, no matter how irrational it is. But what if I told you that pessimism and optimism can be complementary instead of contradictory? We have all been enraptured into believing that everlasting sanguinity, optimism, hopefulness, all of these are our watchwords to success. Pessimism has long been viewed as an ill, as something that should be disparaged in the strongest of terms. And to that I ask, why? Why is having an essence of pessimism also bad? Now, this by no means suggests that we must spend every waking minute of our lives thinking that the world is going to end right now, or the ceiling is going to come crumbling from above, or thinking that Juan is perhaps never going to talk to a girl in his life, which is possibly true, but you get the point here, right? We have all been attuned to this postulate. Chase your dreams, aim for the stars, go for the galaxies since the time that we have developed senses. But nobody talks about what happens if we chase for the stars and then come crashing right back down to earth as mere earthlings. What happens then? Nobody knows. Shouldn't everyone have that inherent devil's advocate that says, hey man, you wanting to become like Sir Richard Attenborough or Steve Irwin, that's cool and all, but what happens if you end up like this? Yes, that was me. I was 4 years old and I took that kick from the goat like an absolute champ and knocked one important life lesson into my mind, which was that I would make a horrible Animal Planet host, but more importantly, it taught me a few lessons about pessimism, which I'm here to share today. This influx of pessimism in my thought process made me loop out exactly how I would respond to a situation given a stimulus. Before we get into that, let us first examine how an optimist would react to a stimulus. When an optimist is given a stimulus, his mind instantly races to what his main objective is. This is his goal and this is what he is trying to achieve. Once he is clear in his mind as to what he is going to achieve, he starts chalking out a plan. This plan is his positive best case scenario, which consists of all the steps that must go right for him to eventually reach his objective. And then with a lot of positivity, a lot of hard work, a never say die attitude, and everlasting optimism, he eventually reaches his goal, right? Voila! No, he doesn't. Wrong. Where does he go wrong? Let me tell you. By assuming that the very best is going to happen, he eliminates the possibility of failure. He believes that his optimism is going to propel him to his objective and beyond. However, that may not always be true. Inevitably, he is going to face challenges, he is going to face setbacks, to which he has absolutely no answer to, because his optimism clouded him from looking at anything except a positive outcome. So what can we do to remedy this thought process? What is it that we can do? The pessimistic optimist also is faced with a stimulus, also races to his desired outcome, also constructs the best case scenario. But here comes the fundamental point of difference, and that is what I call the what if factor. That small diversion up there. Let me explain. The optimist is on his merry ways with stars in his eyes, optimism in his heart, believing that there exists no roadblock that will hamper him from reaching his objective. Everything is going well until, bam! He gets into a head-on collision by the pessimist who asks just one question. And that question is, what if? What if you don't reach your destination? What if something goes wrong along the way? What if your plan A is an absolute disaster? What if your plan B is an even bigger disaster? What happens then? By assuming that the very worst might happen, the pessimistic optimist privies himself up to the possibility of failure. By doing this, he ingrains a small nuance called skepticism. He becomes skeptical as to whether his plans will work out or not, which leads to him planning, preparing, and evaluating alternative courses of action. So eventually and inevitably, when a particular challenge is faced to the pessimistic optimist, he always has an answer because he has foreseen the very worst happening. This renders pessimism and optimism as two sides of the same coin. This proves how they can complement each other instead of contradict. We have always been told that pessimism cannot coexist with optimism, but I attest here today, when we converge the black and white of pessimism and optimism, it creates a gray. It creates a gray, which is perhaps the most rational thinking process a human being can be in possession of. Now, doesn't this disparage everything that modern motivational thinkers say about never giving up, always chasing your dreams, and all of that? Have a look at this. This illustration is something that all of us have seen since the time that we have developed senses. And it poses one important question. What if you were extremely close to achieving glory when you gave up? This essentially says that we must keep digging and digging and digging endlessly until we eventually reach our objective. But think about this. Let us apply the what if factor here. What if your approach towards your goal was wrong all along? What if you were headed in the wrong direction? What if, instead of being here, your actual objective was here? In this situation, the optimist, he would keep digging and digging endlessly because he's positive that he'll eventually reach his goal, even though he might not. The pessimist just stops. He stops digging, goes right back home, whereas the pessimistic optimist, he might dig in another direction. He reevaluates, he prepares, and he plans for the worst and changes his course of action, maybe even towards glory. Therefore, I believe that we as human beings must be taught when to give up instead of not to give up at all. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I leave you with this. If an opportunity does not knock on your door, by all means, go ahead and build a door. But what happens if opportunities still don't knock on your door? What if? I tell you, break that door right down and build a staircase to another line of thought. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Juan Mathew, and that is Pessimism Reimagined. Thank you.